y'all aren't gonna like what I'm about to say. Hey guys, it's Dee, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about something that is pretty relevant, especially considering it is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, and I hope that you were aware of that, and if you didn't know, now you know. Anyway, this is a very big issue just because, as you all have probably seen in recent news articles or even just on social media, Facebook, Instagram, it's becoming a big topic and it's a big issue. Did I start this camera? Hold up. Yeah, but let's just talk about some stats first. So about 1 in 4 adults, just in general, between the ages of 18 and 24 will experience mental illness. And for the entire adult population, it's about 1 in 5. But minorities experience mental health issues at about the same rate as white Americans. However, minorities are 1/2 to 1/3 less likely to access mental health resources. So obviously this is a really, really big problem because that means they're not getting the help that they need. And mental health is one of the most prevalent health issues in the United States. Because of this, today I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why that may be. This goes from different types of stigmas to associations to just actual societal issues, in addition to some of the reasons why we as minorities, and this is not only including racial and ethnic minorities, but women, people in the LGBT community, they're also considered minorities. So yeah, we're just going to talk about some of the reasons why they don't access mental health resources at the same rate, and then also some of the reasons why we actually experience these problems. So let's get to it. Okay, so number 1 is a pretty basic one, and so I'm going to start with basic and we're going to work our way up. Okay, so the first one is pretty basic and it's more of a systematic issue than anything, but it's the fact that a lot of health insurance providers don't actually cover mental health services. This is a big issue because going to see a therapist, psychiatrist is expensive, and the medicine is also expensive. And so that just kind of creates a barrier that especially affects people of lower income. However, considering how many racial and ethnic minorities actually fall into that category, it does begin to be more so of a racial issue more than just a socioeconomic issue as well. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And so they have actually a lot of really great resources that people have been coming out with recently. I think that, hold on. I need this one research. Just different celebrities such as Taraji P. Henson have been actually creating mental health foundations and programs to help these minority communities that are being impacted at different rates. And so that's just something that's actually kind of helping to combat that issue with access. So another issue, again, one of the more systematic issues, is the fact that there aren't very many diverse providers, especially when you look at those who will accept different forms of insurance. And then also on college campuses, specifically at my college, we don't have that many people of color or LGBT providers on campus, and so it can be harder for people in those communities to feel okay with opening up about some of the issues that they're facing and just kind of becoming more vulnerable with someone that they're not familiar with, especially since you don't want to spend half of the time that you're supposed to be getting help explaining why you need help in the first place. Like, that completely undermines the whole purpose of going to see a therapist. And so if you have to sit there and explain to them why certain things are issues, you're not going to want to go back, and you're not going to want to continue to seek help. And that's often a very big barrier for people to actually start to go. This next one is more societal. And a lot of you all have been seeing some of the pushback against this recently, but that is the whole issue with men needing to be tough. And for my Latino community, you get like a little machismo, and how it's just seen as weakness to show any sort of emotion or anything like that. And so a lot of men actually bottle up their different mental issues, and they don't talk to people, which creates an issue for them. So they are actually accessing mental health resources at a lower rate than women, and then also men who are not in the minority population, white men. There we go, of white men. But this is just like a very big issue that we see with men overall. Like, yeah, just don't want to talk. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to show emotion, and actually bottling those things up inside create more issues than they actually solve. And so blame the patriarchy. Speaking of the patriarchy, now we're going to move on to our ladies. So, I'm actually going to switch these around. So, like I said, we're talking about more than just African Americans here. So, fetishization of especially Asian and Latino women is a really big issue, just because like they are fetishized more than any other population, and it can kind of be damaging to your psyche to know that most people will only look at you as a sexual object. And not only that, moving on, a lot of younger African American and Black women experience this at a younger age, where their bodies are being sexualized more than their white counterparts. So I've seen a lot of people talk about how they would go to the pool, they have to cover up and everything. And being around other Black people, they saw that they would do something similar, but when they went out with, like, say, their white friends, they would not cover up nearly as much, as their bodies were not sexualized to the same extent. And so this is a pretty big issue for minority females, as they are often seen as more exotic, and that is just a very big issue, and it obviously can be damaging to your psyche, and no one wants that. Like, people want to be able to be treated like a human and not like a sex toy. But moving on with the ladies, another issue specifically, this one's specifically for African American women, and that is the strong Black woman stereotype. They feel like they have to actually carry everything on their shoulders. They don't really have people to talk to, and they're not allowed to show any weakness or anger or anything, for fear of getting the other stereotype, which is the angry Black woman stereotype. Just knowing that you have to kind of balance between those two worlds, and you can't show any emotion at all, kind of goes with the whole like machismo thing. However, instead of it being more so of a choice, although it's still not a choice, it's like fear of actually being stereotyped as something else, and trying to keep those negative ideas off of you, like not associated with you. And then, so some of y'all are gonna like what I'm about to say, and you're just gonna have to get over it, because it's a very, very, very big issue. But homophobia in minority communities, it's a huge issue. So people in the LGBT community are twice as likely to experience mental health issues as people who identify as straight are. So now, one, LGBT population is already a minority community, which is acknowledged in the Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. However, when you combine that with people who have the intersectionality of being both LGBT and of color, you get that overlapping issue where they're twice as likely to experience a mental health issue, but also twice as likely to not actually receive any help for their issues. So you'll see where the issue lies there. And so we have such a big issue with homophobia in minority communities, and Black people, I'm looking at you, because it's become such a big thing. I've had conversations with Black guys who said that if one of their friends came out to them as gay, they wouldn't be able to talk to them anymore. And I'm like, do you know how much that can affect someone? Just even the possibility of them not being straight completely ostracizes them. And that makes no sense, because it's literally as much a part of them as their skin color is. I mean, yes, they have ways that they don't have to necessarily show that they are part of the LGBT community. Unlike your skin, you can't rip that off, you can't really hide that. But it's still a big part of them, and just the fact that they would have to hide in certain situations and communities is unfair and unrealistic, because that makes no sense. You would not want to have to hide your culture or other things about yourself. And there's just so much negativity. Even people who claim they're allies or that they're okay with it, but they don't want to see it, or why do they have to put that on display? That's not being supportive, and that's still damaging to their psyche. And we're just even at my school, we've had talks about this, and there's so much homophobia in the African American and other minority populations. And a big thing that people attribute to this, this isn't necessarily related specifically to minorities, but religion is such a big part of that, and it doesn't make any sense. Because I know plenty of people in the LGBT community who are also extremely religious. So I need y'all to find a different reason and get your heads together, because you are helping to contribute to these mental health issues that we are seeing, and it's not okay. But speaking of religion, y'all, this is a really big issue, and obviously I don't have as much experience with how white people use religion as it concerns mental health. However, I have seen how it is used in the minority community, and a lot of parents also, I don't know if you all have seen the memes where I could not find it before I made this. If I can find it before I put this up, I will pop it up here. But have you seen that meme where it's kids will say they're depressed, and then Black and Latino parents will be I don't care, and it's that's not healthy. But usually you don't get something that's that blunt. However, you will get something that's saying you're not praying hard enough, which is in a way kind of saying the same thing, because there are plenty of people who can pray or whatever, and that's not going to help them with these issues. I mean, in a way they can, especially just having that connection can help people get over it, or not even just get over it, cope with it. But it's still such a big problem to think that someone who is experiencing a real issue just isn't praying hard enough, because it's like saying someone who's in poverty isn't praying hard enough. That doesn't make any sense. And while there are definitely people who can find some solace in their religion, that's not everyone. And not only that, sometimes you need more than just that. Sometimes you need actual help, because it's different chemical imbalances in your brain. And if you believe that God or Jesus, depending on your religion, or all of the other deities create people in a specific way, this goes the same way. This is just a challenge that they have to deal with. And although it's definitely not necessarily fair, it's also not fair for you to say that because they are not subscribing to something that you believe or not doing it as well as you think they should, that they should suffer because of it, because that's not how this works. And you are also contributing to the problem. Ooh, okay, sorry parents. We gon' continue to go in on you for a little bit. So the next two are still about you. So this one is, so many people, especially, okay, I mainly have experience with the Latino and African American communities, but I know this is an issue in other communities as I've had conversations with my Asian American friends, and or even just like my Asian friends from when I was in Australia. It's very, very similar, but a lot of us lack the ability to properly communicate our emotions, because anytime that we tried to when we were younger, it was labeled as talking back or being rude. Parents, your child expressing their emotions or disagreeing with something that you said is not them being rude. Now, if they're getting all up in your face and yelling at you and stuff, yes, that's rude. But them just expressing themselves and trying to relay some information to you is not them being rude, and that has had a very damaging effect on how they're able to cope with their emotions and different issues as they've gotten older. And we see a lot of those issues now with people who have emotional unavailability and an inability to actually communicate what is wrong with them because they weren't taught those skills when they were younger. And that is such a huge issue. So people who's my age, who's having all these babies, because I see all y'all on my Instagram and Facebook feeds, make sure that you're learning from your parents' mistakes. Because although I just said we were going in on the parents, it's not entirely their fault, because that's how they were raised and they didn't know any better. But now in this age, with all of this information on here, including this video, you have the ability to gain the knowledge to do better than what your parents did, and that's what the goal of every parent should be. Okay? Now, one more time, you parents, you're not off the hook yet, although again, this isn't your fault. So, learning disabilities, aka childhood disorders, often go unnoticed, especially in minority communities, just because parents don't have enough experience or knowledge on the issues to actually identify that there is something wrong. If a child doesn't want to sit down or read or do what they're supposed to, parents get mad and want to punish them instead of figuring out what the actual issue is. Or they just believe that their child can't do it because they don't know what the signs are, so they don't know that they should get help. And so that's a very big issue. So we see a lot of people who, although I do believe that ADHD is overprescribed. Now, I personally was not diagnosed until I got to college, and that was because I was high level performing, and also people, just because someone is high functioning with a learning or mental disorder does not mean that it doesn't exist. Okay. And just going with that, so again, young parents now, and also older parents, if you want to try and help your kids as they are still growing, because I'm still a fetus. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but yeah, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Okay. But yeah, just like learning more about this information and figuring out the best ways to actually help your children when they're going through a rough time can be very beneficial, and it's also very necessary. So this last one is gonna be the most controversial one of all the stuff that I said, and that's because it is still being researched and it's still being analyzed, but that is actually this idea known as post-traumatic slave syndrome, or basically the idea that trauma and disorders can be passed down through generations. And so let's think about it. If we look at all of the different types of oppression that have happened, and so I specifically mentioned like the post-traumatic slave syndrome. However, I believe that this could also and is also something that affects other minority communities who experience oppression, because just having that knowledge that your ancestors, not even your ancestors, like your grandparents, went through all of these atrocities and were hunted down and were beaten, enslaved, forced to work for little to no pay, depending on your history, can be kind of damaging. Like just knowing that someone hated you specifically for something that you could not control, and there are still people who do. Guess whose phone filled up? Yeah. Used all my storage up. I've been doing a lot of videos recently, and unfortunately most of them aren't even for this channel. Sad. But anyway, I think that I left off talking about the generational effects of oppression. And I don't exactly remember what I said previously, but I believe that I left off talking about how like different minorities can experience this, even though the actual name that I talked about was post-traumatic slave syndrome. And it can be very damaging just to know that a lot of these issues are still going on, and that a lot of people try to ignore them and pretend they don't exist. Like, that's not okay. And it can just be damaging to one's psyche to know that people hate them specifically because of something that they cannot control. And so that's just something to keep in mind. I went more into depth when I actually recorded this the first time, but I've forgotten a lot of what I said there. But I do remember that I said that unfortunately this isn't something that's studied a lot at the moment, and hopefully it will be more so in the future. And so although I didn't want to touch on this topic, I know that it's not something that has as much scientific proof evidence. However, I feel that you can see it evident in the social issues, like even just some things are triggering to people and they don't even know why. And just like even just going to the Blacksonian, which is great. If you all haven't been there, you should definitely go. But like there were certain things there that like I couldn't look at, I couldn't read. I was like, it's too much. I really enjoy going to the Blacksonian. I've been there about 3 times at this point, but there's some things that I'm not ready to deal with that make me feel ways that I don't want to, even though I've personally never experienced most of the things that they talk about in the Blacksonian. And so I think that that's a personal exposition of how this generational oppression can be a thing. And so I hope that you all enjoyed this video. I hope that you are really, more so than you enjoying it, I hope that you learned something from it, because I feel like it was very important to go over these things. And I personally wish that I was able to go more in depth with them, but 1, this video already long, and 2, I'm not an expert, but this is something that I'm passionate about. I actually wanted to do a TED Talk on it. Unfortunately, my idea didn't get chosen, but that was more so because of my lack of preparation on my part. So we're gonna improve that for later on. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.